Hi guys, I'm back and I made something new. Look at this cool thing. Ooh. And it glows too. Wait for it. Ooh. It's a little pointy because it's multiple lights, but I think it's okay. And so this is the sickle from Aphelios, the Lunar Beast skin from League of Legends, which is gonna be part of my Aphelios cosplay, which is happening at some point. Trust and believe. So if you follow a lot of cosplayers or have been on any conventions, you probably have seen these huge, like amazing builds of weapons and armor, like amazing. Like this alien that I can show you from a Baldur's Gate 3 at the Franco a couple of weeks ago, which I got to compete against in the Franco cosplay competition, which I won. Like, I still can't believe it somehow. It's been crazy, and thank you for all the people who have shown me so much appreciation for my performance and cosplay. It's been amazing. But back to the video. I made some props like the bast from Marceline. I made a huge hammer from Monokuma and a bow, and no, only a bow and not an arrow for Kindred because they don't have a arrow, they have magical arrows. But I never really made it the way that cosplayers like are supposed to make them, or the professional cosplayers make them, because the way I made them, it was with a paper mache and styrofoam and wood sometimes, which is okay, it worked for me, but it's not waterproof, the surface is not smooth whatsoever, and it's kind of annoying to work with. So the big thing that the professional cosplayers use is EVA foam. Probably Warbler too. But we're gonna talk about foam this video and how I made this thing out of foam. And the struggle it was, because it was not as easygoing as I wished it was. But honestly, that wasn't really the fault of the foam. You will see. So let's get into it. So this is the original sketch, and here I just upsized it. And first, of course, I cut it out. And to see if it's the right size, I make some test sword swings. So funny enough, because I never worked with foam, I didn't have any. The only foam I had was the one I got gifted as a participant at the Summoner Showcase. It's a walk-on cosplay competition which Cosplay Shop awarded every participant with like these DIN A4 like foam sets, which had every kind of foam. First of all, the LED foam, which I was very happy about, was in that set because I wanted it to light up. And so now I just sorted by thin and thick foam, because I'm gonna use the thin one for the blade and the thick one for the handle. And now I just traced the shape of the handle onto the thick foam. And this foam is the 10mm one. And the black one is actually the low density, which means it's just softer. And of course copy that, because 1 centimeter is not gonna be enough, so we're gonna need more than that. And here's when I realized that even that is not enough. So we're gonna make a third one. This time it's high density foam, just to have more stability. And this is better. Now onto the blade. Here I first drew on the part where it's gonna be thick, and the outer part is gonna be the thin blade part. Now, because I didn't have enough foam to cover the entire blade, I lined it up at the part where the paint will go, so it's more seamless. So here's a little jump because I forgot to record, so I catch you up. These are the parts that I cut out after. This is the glue I'm going to use to attach them, which is this one. This is the light I'm going to use inside. And this is the groove I made so the light will fit in there. And in it goes. So that the on-off switch is at the bottom. So now one problem I encountered is the thin foam is just too wiggly. So I made a piece of wire and shaped it into the form of the blade. But because one wasn't strong enough, I twisted it. Which is easier with a screwdriver. So this is how it looks now. For that I carved at the spot where the wire will go and then used a Dremel to make it a little bit bigger so the wire will fit. Then I glued it in place with hot glue, which is good glue for something that has to dry quick and is stable, but I wouldn't recommend it for gluing the parts together because it's very messy. Now I poked the middle part through the wire so it would be completely centered and will stick to the wire very good. Now the first layer of glue, let it dry and then attach it. And because we have a couple of pieces, we'll have to do that over and over again. And on this part I can actually show you how contact cement works. Because you put it on, let it dry for 10 to 15 minutes. And then after it dries, which you can see here, it's way matter. And then you put it on and it sticks together. But it sticks together instantly. And if you want to adjust it just slightly, you will have to tear it off and do it again. So onto the light. I glued that on with contact cement as well. And then glued the other part over it. I was first worried if the glue will have something to do with the light, but why would it? It's a cable without any leaks. The glue will not get in contact with it. So as you can see now I'm working through the night. The lighting is quite bad, but I think you can see what's happening. More glue. And now the thicker part, so the blade will have some dimension. Which looks messy now, but it will be dremeled in place. Now you just need to close the glue and close it very good. And then this is after the first Dremel round, which is just this like power file that you can scrape off anything, any edges real nice. And as you can see, I didn't have any normal sandpaper, so I used things that you put in the power file or anything, or actual things from the Dremel, and just used it by hand. Now onto the lights. Here I clipped the first side in place and then glued it on. And yes, some of the clips glued to each other, which wasn't that nice, but most of them survived it. I will say, as I mentioned in the intro, it's a little dull because it's multiple LEDs, and I wish it was like one continuous light, but I didn't find any LED strips which were that small. Now the LED foam, which will let the lights shine through, which is actually a big part of painting this, because you cannot cover the LED foam with anything like thick paint or something, because then this shining through effect doesn't work anymore. And the thin foam on top you can actually just cut with scissors. Now I made a little notch so it will bend. And I'll just need 2 of these and go to the handle. With the needle I poked the image through so I can see where the grooves are supposed to be. Same thing on the other side, because of the holes you can clearly see where it was. Now I did that with the Dremel too, and I actually recorded it too, but lost the footage. And second round with the hand sanding. Now second round with the glue. I bond the transparent one extra so it will be easier to hide, but also to make sure that the light will poke through. I secured it with a lot of clips and then just keep on gluing stuff. And the edges I just glued with super glue. Now to smooth out the edges, this is foam clay. It can also look like this or like this. So my problem was this foam was very dry. Because I got it back at the Sockets at 2022. So I tried to revive it with water because it makes foam clay much softer, and I left it overnight, but as you can see it didn't work.
Brother,
But because I had such a suspicion, I grabbed a foam clay from a friend of mine, so thanks Aiko at this point. And this one was way softer and better to work with. So I used some water to make it even softer and then push it into the edges to make them smooth. Here I made little noodles out of the clay and pushed it between the blade and the handle because the gap was a little bit too big. Now I'm gonna pause for a second. So there's one more thing that I could have used, which is this. It's called Quickie Seal, and it's for holes like edges or unsmooth surfaces. You can just put it over, like make it smooth with your finger or anything, and it will look much better And it's pretty much like the cosplay form, but more liquidy and easier to work with. But it just didn't arrive in time. I've been done for a couple of days and this just came now in the mail, so didn't happen, but it was okay. Back to the prop, now I'm gonna use Mod Podge to smoothen the surface and prime for painting. This will dry like an extra latex layer, and you really need that because the foam has a lot of texture and it soaks up paint a little bit like a sponge. And here, because I was lazy, I just pulled the Mod Podge over and made a mess. But it was faster. Now the gadget that made this process hell. Airbrush. I got an airbrush for this because, as I said, you cannot just put thick paint as acrylic paint, which I like to use, over LED foam because it will just block everything, and I also used it to prime the darker parts of the foam with white. And now the struggle begins because the paint just didn't come out anymore. Why, you ask? Well, this is the needle of an airbrush, and through this little hole the paint comes out, so it's very easy to get it stuck if it's just a little bit too thick. And that was my main problem because I did not thin the paint enough. So I got stuck the whole time and it was a pain. But before we go on to the blade, I just use acrylic paint to make a base coat on the handle. And now the tricky part, to let it dry without touching anything. After that, I spray painted it gold. I use a darker gold and a brown to contour and make the shapes more clear. Now I'm just gonna remove the tape from the spray painting. And get to painting this red ombre light effect on the handle. Which means in the middle with a very light red. So now I started painting with acrylic paint because there was no LED effect at the beginning. And I did with a little pencil and the darkest red I had. Which radiated towards lighter red at the bottom and the top to make it look like it's glowing. Now I cut up the shape of the painting on the weapon. And mixed up a gradient from red to yellow to paint the background. Now and then I turn on lights to see if I hit the LED part with the acrylic, so I wouldn't cover it up. And this radiant was actually pretty fun to paint. So because detail painting was so tedious and I had to draw very accurate, I did it off camera to make it as accurate as I could be. And then I remembered I have to do it twice. So now it's the next day because I didn't finish detail painting last night. And I have no idea how that got on there, but we'll just paint over it. Now I just tape the detail off to do the airbrush. Now this time I really tried to mix the paint with a lot of paint thinner so it wouldn't be too thick. And I didn't show it at the beginning, but I actually wear safety precautions like a mask and gloves. So the yellow actually worked just fine. It was thin enough and the layer did not disturb the LED. I wasn't 100% satisfied with the intensity of the color, but that's what you get from getting a lot of thinner in there. And from now, everything will go downhill. So I quickly clean up the mess. And during the sequence, you may notice something which I didn't. Because this part of the weapon does not have any tape. So I taped it afterwards, and luckily the airbrush didn't really get into the detail. So now after orange, I want to go with red. And I thinned that out too and mix it with the orange so it would be an ombre effect. So it was double thinned basically. And it was still too thick. And it just didn't come out. I had to clean it and everything. It was a mess. And then I realized something that I should have realized long before. If you use water and a lot of paint thinner, you can actually thin acrylic paint down enough so that it isn't too thick for the lights. What I did right here, I thinned the paint with the water and got over the entire weapon again with a much more intense yellow, which I would like, and did everything with water thinned acrylics. And now we pause it again. So in conclusion, the spray paint wasn't necessary. It was nice to try out and I would probably learn from it and try to do more things with it. But for this example, it was kind of a waste. After removing the rest of the tape, I'm just gonna fix up the detail a little bit. And the last step is to clear top coat, which I just sprayed on 2 layers on each side. And that's it. The weapon is done.
Cosplay Weapon Aphelios. The deadliest is your faith.
So that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'm actually very happy with how this turned out for my first real foam prop. And if you have any other ideas what I should do next, be sure to write me a comment, like and subscribe, and we see each other in the next one. Bye.